We have a report that gives you a wrap of his life and what he has left behind. We'll also hear from the NDC campaign team, which had the news on the campaign trail, which they have subsequently suspended. We'll hear his recent comment on election 2020 and the very last comment he shared with the Ghana Journalists Association on integrity and accountability. Ideals that he stood for will also be in the regions, especially the Volta region from where his mother hails. We're live at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital where he died, and his home where workers we have interacted there who work with him are distraught. This is The Pulse. My name is Gifty Andopia. We want to hear from you as we all mourn former President Jerry John Rawlings. The number is 0540-109-009. You can also reach us on our social media handles on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. We're back with more. Welcome back. Like I said, this is our continuing coverage of the death of a former president. Now, President Akufo-Addo has announced a 7-day national mourning and directed that all national flags fly at half-mast. The president issued a statement a while back in which he officially announced the death of the former president. In that statement, he also sent warmth the way of the former president's family. We'll tell you more of that statement, but first, a short report that catalogs the life of Mr. Rawlings.
How many of us would toy with the truth if we had to be dealing with our language?
Jerry John Rawlings was born in June 1947 in Accra, Ghana, to Victoria Agbotui from Jolikope Keta and James Ramsey John, a chemist from Castle Douglas in Scotland. On May 15, 1979, Rawlings and 6 other soldiers staged a coup d'etat against the government of General Fred Akufo, but failed and was arrested. On June 4, 1979, Rawlings led another coup to oust the Akufo government and Supreme Military Council. He became the chairman of a 15-member Armed Forces Revolutionary Council AFRC, which ruled the country for 112 days. On 24th of September 1979, power was peacefully handed over by Rawlings to President Hila Liman. On 31st of December 1981, Rawlings ousted President Hila Liman in another coup d'etat, claiming that civilian rule was weak and the country's economy was deteriorating. He established the Provisional National Defense Council (PNDC).
That a coup will not succeed in the atmosphere.
The military junta as the official government. Rawlings established the National Commission on Democracy (NCD) shortly after the 1982 coup and employed it to survey civilian opinion and make recommendations that would facilitate the process of democratic transition.
People like to make all kinds of claims about Rawlings, that he didn't want to hand over. Absolute rubbish. I will use this occasion to tell them something that they never imagined. Had we, any one of us, dared to suggest that we're going to stay on for one more day, would have lost the complete support of the masses.
In 1992, Rawlings founded the National Democratic Congress (NDC). On 7th January 1993, the same day that the new constitution came into effect and the government became known as the Fourth Republic of Ghana, he became president. He was re-elected in 1996 for 4 more years. In November 2000, Rawlings was named the first International Year of Volunteers 2001 eminent person by the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, attending various events and conferences to promote volunteerism. Rawlings attended Achimota School and the Military Academy at Teshi. He was married to Nana Kodedwa Rawlings, who he met while at Achimota School. Mr. Rawlings has 3 daughters, Zanetta Rawlings, who is currently a member of parliament on the ticket of the NDC. There is also Yasantua Rawlings, Amina Rawlings, and a son, Kimothy Rawlings. Mr. Rawlings recently buried his mother, Victoria Agbotui, who was 101 years. Jerry John Rawlings will be remembered as Ghana's democratically elected president who served the longest and perhaps handed the country one of its greatest assets, democracy.
Christianize me if you may, but don't try to Europeanize me. Climate is not calling for it.
That is a brief report that catalogs the life of the man we're all mourning today. Well, Mr. Rawlings is hailed for many things, but he's also been criticized on different fronts. So one of the things he's known to have stood for is accountability, upon which he says he formed his National Democratic Party. In 2019, he met with the Ghana Journalists Association. Here is what happens to be one of his most recent comments on integrity and accountability.
Repeated. There was a time when the Chinese ambassador sat here and was asking me, like, where is the revolt? Where is the revolution? Like, it just came and disappeared again or what? I said, yes, something like that. But it's here, it's right with us. So, in a way, I had to explain to him where it's gone to for the moment. Speaking English is wonderful. French, German, all these colonial languages, they seem to command more power than our local languages. You know, but somehow we've adopted the English language or the French or, you know, some of these colonial languages. And we speak them without the integrity that is part of our culture. There's so much integrity in our culture, in our local language, but somehow we're speaking this foreign language without the spirituality that related to integrity that we speak in our languages. Kufuor, for instance, if he had to speak to his driver or his cook or his steward in English language, he could almost get away with saying anything. But if he had to transmit the same thoughts in his local language, Twi language, to his Twi-speaking cook or steward, if he is not mindful of how he's saying what he's saying, the man will think bibi, you know, midwa. The point I'm trying to make is that this colonial language, what we should be doing in speaking this great English language is to transmit, is to take along the integrity in our cultural language, in our cultural traditional way of life, into the English language, so that as we speak it with integrity. But somehow, this English language has come to represent a power that can subdue the spirituality, the integrity of you, which you find in your language. Because the English language has power. It can promote or demote you. It can sentence you. It has power over your Twi or your Ewe or your Gan language. But of course, in your own traditional setting, where the Wulomo, the this, that chief, that elder, don't speak that English very well. If you want to make sense or see how sensible the people are on the ground seated around you, you better speak the God, the ever on the tree. So that's why when we are in their countries, we speak their language with the spirituality of truth, with integrity.
Now, that's one of the key things that he is known for, and we'll be talking about that. Winston is still here with me. We'll be talking about that. We'll also raise up for money with whom he was talking in that particular clip, and then we'll talk a bit more about what he stood for, the content when it comes to integrity. He seems to be a very simple man, you're very simple beans and Gary man, but also carries a very complex message as you heard him espouse it. We'll break it down. But right now, I want to take you to Kumasi, where Maxwell Agbagba is standing by. Maxwell has been on the campaign trail of the NDC, the party that this man founded, and they have suspended their campaigns. But how did this message get to them? And how dramatic was that transition? Let me connect right now with Maxwell. Hello, Maxwell. Maxwell, do you hear me?
Yeah, hello, Gifty.
Fantastic.
So, Gifty, we are coming to you live from the... Yes, I can hear you.
Go ahead.
We are coming to you live from the Golden Bean Hotel here in Kumasi, where the former president and NDC presidential candidate John Mahama has been lodging. He just arrived here together with members of his campaign team. In there, we had a campaign manager, Joshua Alabi, walked in. We also had a couple of other people, Betty Modidris, all of them, just walked in to the hotel. What we are hearing from some of his handlers are that they are checking out of this hotel in the next 30 minutes, and it is because of the information that they got. Just some minutes ago, though, we saw some people checking out, bringing out their bags, taking them to the vehicles that have been parked over there. Those vehicles were in a community here in the Ashanti region, and that was where we got the first indication of this sad incident. Now, what happened in that community where we visited on the third day of John Mahama's visit to the Ashanti region was that usually when he gets to the community, he interacts with the people, and then when he sits down, the chiefs of the community would come around, ask custom demands to shake hands with him. But something strange really happened. What happened this time around was that, well, I'll come back to that, but you can see people checking out of the hotel right now. Gifty, some party supporters are also trooping here because they know that the former president is lodging here, and I'm sure they want to say goodbye to him as he leaves this hotel today. But as I was saying, something strange happened on the campaign ground today. Whilst the people were going around, the chiefs were going around, the NDC presidential candidate couldn't shake hands with them. We noticed that he was on the phone the whole time. That is not usual. That was very, very unusual. We really, at that point, did not know what was happening. But just some minutes later, we got information trickling in on social media that former President Jerry John Rawlings, had passed on. Usually when the former president speaks, when NDC presidential candidate speaks and is done with his campaign, he will go around familiarizing with the people, having interactions with them, smiling with them, urging them to continue working hard and all of that. All of that did not happen today on the campaign ground after the information was communicated to him. In fact, I saw Betty Maud Idrisu actually just quickly walk past to his vehicle just when we got that information that the former president has actually passed on. So that was it. At that point, it had not been confirmed that the former president had passed on, but we were just interpreting the body language and the how dampened their spirits were. Because we've been to many places, with a campaign team. This time around, there was no excitement whatsoever. Even when we were coming here to Kumasi, the Golden Bean Hotel, where the NDC presidential candidate is lodged. What happened was that, usually he would bring down his windows and be waving people, making the too sure sign, the number two sign. But all of that did not happen today. The sirens were down. Everybody had a dampened spirit, and that is the atmosphere and the general, mood here. You can see people gathered in groups, and it's just about discussions about the passing of the former president. But I have the chairman for the NDC here with us. I would have him introduce himself and then we'll interact with him. So, your name and then your designation.
I'm Nana Kwesi, Ashanti Regional Chairman of the NDC.
Great. Can you tell us how you got information about this sad event?
As we all know, our flag bearer is in the region for his campaign. So on the way to Obuasi, he had a call that our father has passed away. So he called me that, Chairman, this is what has happened. So what are we going to do? So we decided that when we get to Obuasi, we have to end the campaign and come back. And he said that he's going to Accra right now. So as you all saw what happened, the mood came down. Everybody was very sad. So we have to end our campaign to come back to Kumasi. So that's what happened. Everybody is sad. Our founder, our everything has passed away, as we all know.
As Ashanti Regional Chairman, did you get a chance to meet the former president? Have you had interactions with him before?
When I was 16 years, my dad was the coordinating director. So I met the founder first and he shook hands with me that I'm going to be a great person in the NDC, because those days my dad wasn't a politician, but since he's working with the DCE and we've got that opportunity to meet, those days he was the president of the Republic of Ghana. He said I was a very nice person and he's going to bless me that one day I'll be a very big person in the party. And as I'm standing here, I'm now the regional chairman of the NDC, so I owe allegiance to the former president, our founder, Jerry John Rawlings, His Excellency. I'm very sad. I'm very sad. All the moods are very down.
Okay, finally, before we leave you to go, the former president stood for probity, accountability, transparency. He was an anti-corruption campaigner. What values or what lessons do you think we can take from his life?
Oh, as we all know, the way our former president, our founder, is, I'm also taking his footstep. I'm very accountable to my people. I'm very obedient, and as he wants the party to be, I know that for now that he has passed, the party will remember him always, and I keep praying for him that God should give him a nice place in heaven.
Thank you very much for talking to us. So you just had Ashanti Regional Chairman of the NDC, speaking to us. A lot of people are still checking out. The former president himself will be checking out very soon. It's a somber atmosphere here. The campaign started with a lot of energy, but it is not the case this time around. I mean, spirits dampened. We just do not have enough words to describe the mood here in the Ashanti region and the hotel where the NDC presidential candidate has been lodging.
So that's Maxwell Agbagba coming to us live from Kumasi, where the campaign is wrapping up to return to Accra following the sad news that we had today. Maxwell, thank you very much for that. Before Maxwell, when Maxwell came up, he told us about how it happened, how the news was broken to them and the reactions that they got. Let's listen to Mr. Mahama, who's the flag bearer of the NDC at the moment, announcing that the party is suspending the campaign.
Communities to ensure one-touch victory for you. Finally, I would like to humbly remind you, Your Excellency, of our humble...
Ayezu. Ayeza. Ayezu. Ayeza. Sarking Zongo. And in paying for Obuasi, East and West, for you now, Moshe Moha. mechiamo ewie sesia yewura obuasimu yante asemde. We just received some very sad news. It makes it impossible for us to continue this campaign tour of Ashanti. So I've spoken to our chairman of the National Campaign Committee, and the committee has agreed that we announce a brief suspension of the Ashanti campaign tour, and the national campaign team will announce a date for resumption of the tour. Enti senya mekae no yewura obuasimu yante asemde. Enti mene chairman of National Campaign Committee akasa na National Campaign Committee apene say yes suspend the Ashanti campaign tour no for a little while. Number ombe announce eda yebe san asha sibium.
That is a flag bearer of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama, announcing that the campaign has been suspended. We'll be taking you very shortly to the Kolbu Teaching Hospital, but my colleague Winston Amwa is here with me. He's the deputy head of our political desk, and he's been talking extensively about this so far. Winston, I just want to take you back to the comment he made in 2019 with the GJA. That was a meeting you were present personally. Let me start with what that meeting was all about, first of all.
Well, so you know that the GJA turned 70 in 2019. So as part of it, they visited, former President Rawlings. So during that courtesy call that they paid on him, Mr. Rawlings talked about some of the feelings he has about journalism. He talked about the need to practice with integrity. And he also talked about how a few persons, who were rich were influencing the media. And so if you heard him talking about integrity, he was actually talking about the fact that journalists should let integrity work in their lives. Yes, he admits that, it's not the kind of profession that pays so well. But if you agree to be a journalist, you're doing so because you intend to serve and you intend to be one that would hold people accountable, particularly those in authority, on behalf of the people whom you serve. And so that's why Mr. Rawlings talked about the need to have integrity. And, it also presented him an opportunity to say a lot of things that he felt he wanted to say about journalists. He had conversations about some of the political issues at the time. He talked about his relationship with some persons and, the usual Rawlings conversation. He spoke for more than 3 hours. And I remember, the Director of Public Affairs of the Ghana Journalists Association saying, "Oh, Mr. President, we have to go and do other things." And he says, no, I didn't ask you to come here. You came here.
So let me finish with what I have to say.
I have looked for this opportunity for long. But you say you would come back again, but let me finish. And so he would go ahead, talk about, when he was president and how he's been to Nigeria and a lot of things.
And Winston, there's something that I noticed pretty striking about what he said. Now, here is, like I said earlier on, you're a very simple person who, we all know the Yokogari story, the person who will be on the ground, the boots on the ground. But he also can be very complex. He also can present a message that's pretty difficult to understand. Now, he was talking about speaking English and then how it relates to integrity. Now, you need to listen to him very deeply to understand the point that he was making. I'm wondering if you understood the point he was, because he says you're speaking English, but there has to be a point where you translate that English language you're speaking into some sort of integrity. And he's talking about our culture and the fact that our culture has a lot of integrity. I don't know. Did you make sense out of it?
I mean, I want to answer your question without being like Mr. Rawlings. And so I want to answer that, when you adopt another language, that language should be used to express your own experiences. Okay. And so, yes, Mr. Rawlings talked about English, and many people have talked about how...
I'm sorry, I need to jump in there.
Yes.
Hold on for me. When I come back, we'll take that. But I need to quickly cross over to the Jubilee House. We speak to Elton Broby. Elton, we understand that President Akufo-Addo will be visiting the home of Mr. Rawlings shortly. Tell us more about this.
Remember that the statement that the president issued made some reference to what should happen in the country starting tomorrow, including flags flying at half-mast and also a one-week national mourning for the ex-president. So, and it's taking effect from tomorrow, 13th of November, till next week. So the assumption is that everything will now begin to take effect from tomorrow. But some few minutes ago, as you can see behind me, the flags here at the Jubilee House got down to a half stage, giving indication that the directive is already taking effect, even though there's timelines to it. Now, before the announcement came regarding the death of the ex-president, President Akufo-Addo had already committed himself to some events today, including a meeting with the National Commission for Civic Education later this evening. But what we've just been told is that we should get ourselves ready because we'll be moving to the family house of the former president at Rage to formally commiserate with the bereaved family. And that is what the media, the press corps here is getting themselves ready to move out of the Jubilee House to the Rage residence of the former president, Gifty.
I was just trying to grab the statement, look it up right here, the statement that the president, issued a while back. It talks about conveying deep sympathies of the government of Ghana, but this, we should take it, is the official announcement of the death of the former president, Elton.
From the president, and indeed on the official president's letterhead, and this is coming from President Akufo-Addo, and he's talking about receiving news of the death of former President Jerry John Rawlings and directing that all national flags fly at half-mast, and also there should be a one-week national mourning beginning tomorrow, 13th November 2020. But as I indicated earlier, some military personnel at the Jubilee House a while ago started, bringing down the flags. So the one right in front of the Jubilee House entrance is already flying at half-mast. They are now moving to the ceremonial gate to also bring it down as well. And then we've been told that very soon the president will also move to the Rich residence of the former president to commiserate with the family, meet with the wife, the children, and to express his condolences to them, because this news obviously came in as shock to many, including he himself. He came in at the time that he was interacting with the Malian interim president, who is on a day official visit to Ghana to apprise the president on developments, political development in this country, because President Akufo-Addo is also the chairman of ECOWAS. It was during the joint news conference that the information came through, and it sort of destabilized everything that was happening. The mood, the tone, everything changed from that onwards. And then few hours later, a statement came from the Director of Communication, but this time not the official Director of Communications letterhead, but from the President's letterhead, giving indication of the seriousness attached to the development that is happening in the country at this very moment. And so there is a one-week national mourning starting tomorrow, and all flags flying half-mast. As you can see, the Jubilee House military officers just a while ago brought the flags down, giving meaning to the president's directive for this to take effect. Now, federals, what we've been told is that the president is currently in a meeting, and after the meeting, will move out of the Jubilee House to Ridge, which is some 2-3 minutes drive from the Jubilee House, to meet with the family of the late president and commiserate with them, and then perhaps get the information at first hand what may have occasioned the death of the former president, and from the family's perspective or point of view, their plan of action going forward. And then government, as already indicated in the statement, stands ready to support the family in this very difficult moment. And then also remember that a few minutes ago, we also got an official statement from the household of the former president, signed by the Dr. Zanata Rawlings, officially announcing the passing of Mr. Rawlings, which happened at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital in the early hours of today.
Elton, you spoke about the military officers there, and I'm particularly interested to find out can you describe their mood to us?
But from where I'm standing on the first floor of the Jubilee House, they have been directed to do this. And indeed, for them, they are military officers. Sometimes some of these things, they do so with comportments. And they are doing so also because the person whose demise the whole country is celebrating, for want of a better word, was a former military officer, retired from the Ghana Armed Forces as a flight lieutenant. So he was one of their own, and for that reason.
Elton, am I losing you? It looks like I have. But Elton Brobe there, who is bringing us
the seriousness attaching to it was quite evident on reaching the. Once we get to the residence of the former president, we expect to hear a lot. We expect to witness more solemn scenes, and that is what all of us have been asked to do.
Elton, just a quick one before you go. The Malian president who visited, is he part of the entourage that's going to the rich home? Because we know that recently when the coup plotters came here, one of the key things they did was to visit Mr. Rawlings in his home.
For now, we don't have that information, whether he's accompanying us. His program of activities came to an end about an hour ago here at the Jubilee House. He's already driven out of the Jubilee House. And
have I lost you again, Elton? It looks like
all of us are just waiting to the resident. President is concerned. Yeah, sorry, Gifty, you know, it's been a very hectic day, a lot of calls coming in. So that's how I'm having a stable connection. So that is the situation. He's already driven out of the Jubilee House, expected to leave Ghana tomorrow back to his home country in Mali. He brought news that they are working to ensure that the country is returned to constitutional rule, and that was the crux of the information that he brought with him in this meeting with the president. But for now, this is a Ghana affair. The whole nation is in shock. President Akufo is about to move to the residence of the former president to formally meet with the family, get to understand what may have occasioned the death, and then hear from them their plan of activities going forward and how supportive government can be in this very sad moment.
Thank you very much. Elton Bobe is Presidential Affairs Correspondent for us, is joining the President's entourage that will be going to the rich home of former President Jerry John Rawlings, and we will certainly have eyes there as well. We'll cross over as and when we need to. But let me quickly take you back to the place where the former president was last seen, the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, the Cardiothoracic Center to be specific. Fred Smith, head of our health desk, has been there. Take a look at what he brought earlier. We'll be connecting with him live, by the way. Take a look.
We're currently at the Cardiothoracic Center of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. This is where news is coming that former President Jerry John Rawlings has passed this afternoon, and we understand that he's been here for over a week getting treatment for an ailment which has not been disclosed to us yet. There are no family members here, as you can see, but the place looks very quiet. Staff are refusing to give us any information at this point because they want family members to come in and give information. Right behind me, you can see my information is that there is a VIP ward up there where he was, and following his passing, he would still be right here in this building behind me.
Fred Smith is joining me live. Hello, Fred. Hello, Fred. What more do we know about the former president's presence there?
If you can see behind me is the Cardiothoracic Center building of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. That's where the former president was brought 3 days ago after falling ill. And during the care, we are told that the doctors discovered that he may have COVID, and so was transferred from this very facility to the medical block, which is also within the compound of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. And that's where they have the medical ICU, intensive care unit, and doctors were taking care of him. And unfortunately, this morning, we heard of the bad news of his passing. Earlier today, our sources tell us that he had contracted COVID, and that was discovered whilst on being treated.
Fred, are you still there? It looks like I have lost Fred Smith there, but Fred is standing by live for us at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, where Mr. Rawlings is said to have died today. He was at where Fred Smith is standing by at the Cardiothoracic Center. There, we'll try and reconnect with Fred, but at least you know now what has happened, and there has been a statement from the Rawlingses signed by Dr. Zanetto Rawlings that Elton Brobis spoke about. I'll tell you a bit of that as well, but I'm still here with Elton, with Winston, Winston Amwa. Winston, there's a statement that's just coming in signed by the daughter of Mr. Rawlings. I'll just read a bit of that for you. It says, "It is with deep sadness that the family of His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings, retired, informs the general public that the former President of the Republic passed away on Thursday morning after a short illness. The family requests privacy at this difficult moment. Details of funeral arrangement will be announced in due course." It is signed by Zanetto Ajuman Rawlings there. That's a statement that has just come in. And it is our live coverage of the death of the former President. Winston, you were talking about one of the things that he stood for, and we can maybe later on talk about this statement if we may, but one of the things he stood for was integrity and accountability. And at that time that you visited him together with the officials of the GJA, you were telling us about the point he was making was speaking English language and bringing integrity to bear on it. And I was saying it was a bit complex, but you understand?
Yes, I mean, it is always complex, but the point is that, you know, the linguists would always tell you of using another language to describe your experiences, what they term as nativization. And you realize that the Nigerians have found a nice way of using English to actually describe their experiences in a manner that you would understand it easily. People have said English makes a lot of bad things look so nice. And so if you're to say things in our local language, you say them as they are. We've always talked about politically correct language, and in recent times we've tried as much as possible to, you know, say things in ways that would look so nice to people. But if you were to speak to people in a language that they understood, you always would speak to them in such a manner they would appreciate the things that they've done wrong without having to think twice and without having to struggle in understanding what you're telling them.
So he makes that point about speaking English language and bringing the integrity that is in our culture to bear on that particular one. They're also requesting for privacy. Winston, that's something we'll talk about briefly. Let me interact with Harun Idrisu. Harun Idrisu is a minority leader in Parliament. He's joining us via phone. Mr. Idrisu, good afternoon and thank you for your time. How did the news come to you?
Good afternoon. With a heavy heart, our hearts go to the family and to the nation. We have lost a monumental political figure and an icon which creates a void that, if I believe, will never ever be filled because of the uniqueness of the personality Jerry John Rawlings. We owe our contemporary democratic politics who've become a beacon of hope as a democracy and a peaceful, stable country. We owe it partly to him and his sacrifices. Ghana has lost a dedicated public servant par excellence, and in my view, no president in our country history have fought corruption better than he did. He fought cronyism, he fought nepotism, he fought graft, he fought abuse of office. Let that be to his memory, that we are all in public service for the public good and not to enrich ourselves to the disadvantage of the larger Ghanaian populace and society. May his soul rest in perfect peace. I'm up north. Very soon the minority will issue an official statement. I believe that all of us will have to suspend any other political activity, including campaigns, and to mourn and mourn him well. We owe him that.
President Akufo-Addo has issued a statement. In that statement, he has issued a 7-day national mourning, and he's directed that all national flags fly at half-mast. How long do you think, for example, the minority will be mourning, apart from the 7 days that has been?
Oh, deservingly, I think in this particular moment, we are led by the president in mourning a former president of the republic. And we all just must respect the state protocols. And the family will advise all of us how to proceed further. So I think that we should all mourn him as directed by the president. It's the right thing he's done, deservingly for him. But as to the other related matters, let the family be the guide.
Okay. Ms. Haruna Idris, I just want to find out, personally, I mean, you have been a stalwart in this particular party, a party that he formed. What is your personal story with Mr. Rawlings?
We just can't fill the void created by the sudden departure of Jerry Rawlings as a party and as a state. It was a very unique. We've lost an enigma of a politician.
I'm losing you intermittently, Ms. Haruna Idris. So if you can hear me again, do share with us your personal story. What was the first time you met him, for example, and what impression did he leave on you?
He inspired all of us into public life and to seek the public good. I believe it was my days at Legon when he was coming to a particular program that there was brouhaha about his visit to the university then. That is when I got closer. And subsequently, when I joined partisan politics and the NDC that he founded, I got much more closer to him, particularly when we formed the youth forum after the defeat of the elections, the defeat of the NDC in the elections of 2000. We worked quite closely with him to reform the NDC as a party, to make it a corporate entity where every person felt a part of it. We worked very closely with him for the necessary reforms of the NDC, which makes it a viable, strong political party today.
Is there the one thing that you will never forget as far as your interaction with Mr. Rawlings is concerned? What would that thing be? Mr.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it looks like I lost him before that, but he talks about his days in university, which is when he met Mr. Rawlings and the work that they did together. Winston, we'll be hearing from people who thronged his home this morning, earlier, who were mourning. But I wanted us to talk about the family is requesting privacy.
Sure.
And I'm wondering what your thoughts are. This is, given the person that he is, do you think the family will get what they did?
Well, certainly be very difficult for the family to get that. But, you know, in times like these, people are grieving. And so as we may try to, you know, go there, commiserate with them and, you know, express our condolences, we should also recognize the fact that, you know, and, you know, we had to wait for a very long time, get confirmation from the family, even before we came on air to say that this is the situation. Even though at the time we knew that Mr. Rawlings had passed on. And this is what we talk about because, you know, yes, he is a former president. We're in a campaign season, so people may want to know what's happening to him. But mind you, despite being a former president of the country, he also had his own private life and his private family. Imagine losing a father, imagine losing a husband, imagine losing a brother. This is very, very sad. Yeah. And so when it happens like this, and, you know, people would take to Facebook, people would take to Twitter and everything and say all manner of things. But I think in the midst of all of these, for the family, they'll be asking themselves the question, how come that I never get to see you again? And for that particular feeling, it's important they grieve. And the psychologists always say when someone is going through problems, going through sorrows, you allow the person to grieve. And so if you prevent the person from grieving, you're hurting the person. And that's why it's important around this time that we allow the family some time to come to terms with what they are going through. And when they are done, and that's why it is only the family that would decide when they would bury the former president, when the funeral will be held. When they are done going through the process and feel they are okay, then they would come out and talk to all of us.
And of course, sometimes we all feel, you know, the connection that we know this person, we know that person. He was a public figure, but like Winston is saying, well, it's a family. Those that are most close to this person, they are feeling it. And like Winston says, they need that space, and hopefully we can give that to them. But some people have been thronging his home to commiserate with the family. Let's hear from some of them.
I was in a 2016 campaign 2020 rallies here were contemporary.
So that's one of the people who went to his home today grieving, and of course we'll be touching base with a lot more. But let's find out what's happening on social media. Of course, Winston is still here with me. Winston, once again, we're talking about a man who talked a lot about integrity, talked a lot about accountability, which is one of the things upon which he criticized his own party years back, because he felt they were not practicing the ideals upon which he built his party. This is happening at a very interesting, within a very interesting timing. And I'm wondering how you see things unfold from the next few days. The timing, the relationship with his party in his, if you like, final days, and how it's going to play out going forward.
Well, so earlier I was talking about two scenarios happening here. And, you know, in talking about Mr. Rawlings passing on around this time, it's also important we distinguish between the 2012. Now, in 2012, we had two situations. We first had John Evans Mills passing away in July 2012. And then in November 2012, 16th November 2012, you had former Vice President Alhaji Ali Mahama also passing away. Now, when John Mills passed on, what happened was that you had the NDC rallying behind John Dramani Mahama. And I remember very well at that acclamation in Kumasi when Mr. Rawlings showed up and talked about why the NDC should support John Dramani Mahama. Now, you have Mr. Rawlings perceived by some as being in a fight with his own party.
Yeah.
Now, if that were the case, because now he's passed on, if that were the case, the situation you would have is that for those who supported him for fear of being in the bad books of Mr. Rawlings, they would go every distance to ensure that they actually stay on the fight. Now, following his death, two things would happen. They may want to say, let us continue that line if it ever existed, and ensure that we would do something in honor of Mr. Rawlings. There could also be the position that, okay, why don't we come together as one party? Because that is the only way we can win, we can achieve victory for the NDC. We don't know what would turn out, but we do know that Mr. Rawlings had been very critical of his own party. And in conversations with people, they had always expressed worry over how he went about things even though he believed that once you lacked integrity, you should be able to say it. I don't know which is going to pan out, whether those who were very loyal to him and thus had fallen with the current party hierarchy would be willing to go back to the NDC and ensure that the NDC wins the election. You've had Neil and Van der Poel make the point that the NDC should win the election, for Mr. Rawlings. I do not know whether those people would support them, or maybe they may say they're going to, probably, also fight their own fight. Another thing you may want to know, and one of the things which would be interesting in the coming days, would be the position of Nana Akufo-Addo.
Exactly, yeah. That was going to be the next point.
It's very early now, but the question is, would she muster the courage? Would she be able to go through this process of contesting as president of the country? We have seen Ophelia Hayford, being made the parliamentary candidate on the ticket of the NPP for Mfantsman West constituency, a few weeks after losing the husband. Can Nana Akufo-Addo go through same and say, I am going to do this for Mr. Rawlings? What were the discussions they held prior to his death? When Joe Biden was on the day of the American election, he went to the grave of his son, because he says his son, before he died in 2015, one of the reasons why, Joe Biden didn't contest the primaries of 2016, the boy told the father that whenever he had the time, he should continue and achieve his long-held vision of becoming president of the United States. What was the last conversation Mr. Rawlings had with his wife in relation to her aspirations to become president? Would she be willing to continue, or at this point, throw her weight behind Zanetta Rawlings? And one thing is instructive here. Now, she signed the family letter.
Zanetta did,
yes. She signed it. And at this time, there are those who believe that many men, pass on a lot of their characteristics to their daughters.
To their daughters or to their sons?
To their daughters.
Oh, right.
We've seen Zanetta, we saw Sammy again trying to get into the shoes of, Kwame Nkrumah. Would Zanetta now assume that leadership position that to many was just a matter of time?
Okay. It was just a matter of time, Winston says. And now you know that in Ghana we have a lot of reverence for the dead, and especially for a person of this stature, we certainly have that reverence. We'll see how that pans out. But right now we want to bring you a lot more of the reactions that we've had. Let's show you a tweet from former President Kufuor, who has also been sending through his message. That is a tweet from Mr. Kufuor. He says, "Rest in peace, Jerry John Rawlings." And that has seen some 433 retweets already. George Oponwea there, he says, "On behalf of the government and people of the Republic of Liberia, and in my own name, I wish to convey deepest and profound sympathy to the government and people of Ghana, the Rawlings family, and the entire Africa for the death of a great statesman and former president." And he tweeted that with a picture of our own very handsome former president, Jerry John Rawlings, right there as you see it. Let's see who else is tweeting. John Benjamin is former British High Commissioner to Ghana. He tweets, "It is very sad to hear of the passing of Ghana's former President Jerry John Rawlings. I was fortunate enough to interact with him on several memorable occasions throughout my years in Accra. My deepest condolences to Nana Akufo-Addo, Zanetta, and all the Rawlings family." That's John Benjamin tweeting their hashtag RIP Jerry John Rawlings, and he tweets that with a picture of himself and Mr. Rawlings. And you know how controversial Mr. John Benjamin was during his time here in Ghana. Let me tell you how you can join us in this conversation if you're watching us wherever you are. We'll be crossing over to the regions as well. The Volta region, especially from where his mother hails. And you know that the Volta region is a stronghold, of course, for the party that he formed as well. The number you can you can message us on or WhatsApp us on is 0540109009. I want to hear from you. And Winston is here. We'll keep the conversation going. As Amwajan has been tweeting as well, we'll bring you that one also. But a few messages and then we'll continue with the conversation I was having with Winston. This one says, "May his soul rest in peace. Ghana has lost a very important personality. JJ was a man of truth, unity, principle, and peace. We saw a president who works with his people at the farm, work in the gutter. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Ghana has lost a great person. We will miss him a lot, especially in Ghanaian politics." And as Kojo Yankson made the point earlier, he really never took his hands off politics. He talked a lot about it and about recent developments. And we'll bring you some of his comments as we go along. This message is from Upper East Region, from Muyaga, by Chris. He says Rawlings was a true leader whose leadership was characterized by feelings for his fellow Ghanaian, especially the poor. He demonstrated that he was there to give hope to his followers. He was also a symbol to the saying that leaders are to serve and not to be served. An old man in my village, Wayaga, asked me just yesterday whether I believe Rawlings would win power if he contested election again for president. Interesting. That's a conversation that someone had recently. But there's something that's happening. I need to draw your attention to it. Maxwell Agbagba is standing by. He seems to have something very exclusive for us. We'll be crossing over to Maxwell shortly. But keep your messages coming. Before we get to Maxwell, this is a message from Techiman. Daniel Abankwa says the death of former President Rawlings is a big blow to Ghana. He was principled, passionate, and a selfless leader. We've indeed lost a great hero. Maxwell, what do you have for us?
Yeah. Okay, so Gifty, what is happening here is that we have some former ministers of the former president actually sharing some fond memories of him. Earlier, we had Joshua Alabi, who is the campaign manager for the 2020 John Mahama campaign. He was a former minister under Jerry John Rawlings. You know, he spoke to us earlier and was talking to us about how he was appointed at a very young age under the tenure of Jerry John Rawlings. We have another minister during Mahama's era, John Dramani Mahama's era, speaking to the press. Let's hear from him.
The political limelight. And anytime he sees me, he tells people that I'm his fourth wife. I don't know what that means. And I don't know who is the second and the third, but he will always say that this is my fourth wife. He will always encourage me. Anytime he meets people, he talks about the fact that he sees me as a very strong, young, talented woman. Since 1996 that I got to know him. And he has always encouraged me. That even the last time at his mother's funeral when he saw me, he has a signal. Anytime he sees me, he will do this. Even at the funeral, he did that. So he's someone that has inspired me a lot. I have grown to like NDC party because of him. And so today when we heard about this news, unfortunately because I've been here the whole of the week, I didn't even get the opportunity to know that he was not feeling well, only to be hit by the news of his demise. But I think that forever he will live in our hearts. Some of us, he's a very special person. He's actually my idol. When I started my political life, that His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings is my idol, and he will continue to be my idol wherever he is.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have the former Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. She was the former Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources under John Mahama, Barbara Sewa. We know that former President Rawlings actually stood for probity, accountability, transparency. He was an anti-corruption campaigner. What lessons do you think we can take from his life?
Thank you very much. For me, my whole political life and everything I do in NDC is guided by the late former president's life and what he stood for. Because he was actually the one who discovered me and who brought me into the political limelight as far back as 1996, when he gave me the opportunity at Prempeh Assembly Hall to give the vote of thanks. And since then, I have grown from one state to the other in the NDC party. And today, I'm the Deputy General Secretary of our great party. And anybody who knows my life knows that I have always been guided by probity, accountability, and whatever he stood for. And I will fondly remember him always, and he will always live in my heart. In fact, he has always been my idol, and he will continue to be my idol, even though he is no longer with us.
There are some who say that his virtues, what he stood for, has been sort of extinguished in our politics now. So you do not see a lot of the values and the things that he stood for now in our current politics. Do you agree?
In the current administration, yes. It is obvious. When I don't want to, turn this whole issue into the normal political talk. But really it is, especially in this current regime, where corruption has become a gift. somebody or corruption is interpreted as gifts. We no longer have corruption. We have completely changed the definition of corruption into something else. So today, it is sad that he didn't live to see the NDC victory, to know that indeed Ghanaians abhor corruption, especially at the level that it is now. But wherever he is, I know that we are going to honor him with a victory.
Finally, before you go, how did the news hit you? Because we're on the ground with you.
Yes.
When the information started coming through, how did it hit you?
It really hit me hard because, you know, I have been here for the past 3 days and I never heard he was sick. So when I heard about the death, if I hadn't heard it from His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, I wouldn't have believed it, because I know he's someone who would not just take that as a joke. If I had heard it, even in the news, I would have doubted it because I never heard that he was sick. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you too.
Okay, so you just heard from Barbara Sewa. She's the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC and then former Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. Okay, sharing her fondest memories of Jerry John Rawlings. In fact, you heard her saying that she was actually discovered by Jerry John Rawlings. What you can see here now are supporters of the NDC who are coming here to the Golden Bean Hotel because they have information that the NDC presidential candidate, John Mahama, will be leaving this hotel where he has been lodging for his 6-day tour in some minutes. So many of them have come here to commiserate with him and also to say their final, to say goodbye to him as campaigns here have been suspended. Let's try and, so as we wait for the former president and the NDC presidential candidates, to come out of the hotel, we have another man here, Joseph Yamin, quite very popular, in the NDC. Let's find out from him how he heard the news and what his reaction was. Sir, you're welcome to join us.
Thank you.
How did you hear this news?
Well, we're on our way to the campaign grounds, and on our way, calls started coming in wanting to confirm whether what they've heard was true. And so we also started, trying to confirm, and unfortunately, it was confirmed to us that he passed away. It's very unfortunate. It has ended our campaign abruptly. But yes, still, because he's a founder, we had no other option than to break the campaign and just come and mourn with him.
He was very critical and of the young people, in the party, always making sure that, sort of whipping you in line. Now that he's no more, what is the NDC going to be like?
No, the NDC will live beyond Rawlings. He's the founder of the party. The party has principles, ideologies that will keep the party going forward. He has also nurtured a lot of people, and we are in there to make sure that the party stays and continue to stay. What is important is that we will make sure that his death will be a victory sign for us in the 2020 elections, just to send a signal that we are ready to keep the party that he founded and to continue to serve Mother Ghana.
Okay. Finally, what are your fondest memories of him?
Well, I remember the day I organized June 4th for him in Ashanti region. I was then the regional secretary. Of all us, he still encouraged me and said, we need to do it. And so go ahead and do it. And his encouragement. And I think one of the best organized June 4ths is what was organized at the Jackson's Park in Kumasi. And that is one thing I remember most about him.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
And our condolences. So we just heard from Joseph Yamin, also sharing his fondest memories of the former president. As you can see now, the numbers are beginning to increase. Earlier, it was just it was just few people here at the Golden Bean Hotel where the NDC presidential candidate has been lodging. Now information is going out that he's checking out of this hotel, getting back to Accra to commiserate with the family of the former President Rawlings. And we are gathering here to say goodbye to him as he check out from the hotel. We are also waiting patiently to bring you visuals of that as he leaves this hotel, as campaign has been suspended, Gifty.
Chen. Maxwell has been talking to Professor Joshua Alabi, who is leading the national campaign for the NDC. We'll bring you that conversation in which he breaks down shortly. I'm still here with Winston Amwa, by the way. I have on the phone Donald Senanu Agumenu, is an aide to the late former president. We'll get to him shortly. Winston, Joshua Alabi has a very long history with the party, and he's worked as a regional minister under the Rawlings administration. He is heading their campaign today. What do you think will be going on in his mind at this, looking at the timing of the death of Mr. Rawlings?
Well, you know, so if you consider the fact that Joshua Alabi, when he became Greater Accra Regional Minister, was less than 40 years when he became Regional Minister. And he became Member of Parliament also when Rawlings was president. And, you know, being on the campaign trail and losing the man who gave you a first shot at political power, it certainly wouldn't be a good moment. But you've had you've just heard Joseph Yamin make the point that they want to win election for him. If there's one thing that this would bring to many of them who are on the campaign trail, who've been, you know, working with Mr. Rawlings in the past, I think it would be an opportunity to do everything within their means, everything possible to win this election in honor of Mr. Rawlings. Indeed, this, like I stated earlier, death could be a make or a further break for the NDC. Yeah. It looks like it could be a make for the NDC. This could be just that moment that would trigger a lot of unity, a lot of talk of, you know, building bridges, mending all the cracks, so they could go into election 2020, for nothing at all, for a victory for Mr. Rawlings.
And you made a very interesting point, Vincent, about where Mrs. Ajma Rawlings stands, you know, in this mix. First of all, he has a political party that on which ticket he's standing, you know, for this particular election. And he has a party that was formed by her husband that is also a very main part of this particular elections, and she's grieving. If you realize, she herself has criticized the NDC at a point. So people will be wondering, will this move her more towards the party now, or will it move her further away from the party? We don't know that yet, but in this country, we have a culture in which we reverence, you know, the dead a lot. We show a lot of respect to people who died, and especially when they are people of this stature, we even show them more respect. So the NDC seems to believe that that will work out for them.
Well, so Gifty, a bit of historical antecedents, and you know that in the build-up to the 2000 elections, there were, you know, you saw the reformed movement, which became the National Reform Party, led by Guzi Tano. Now, they contested the 2000 elections, and when the elections went to the second round, they did not support the NDC. In fact, they threw their weight behind the NPP in the 2000 elections during the runoff. We also saw the Democratic Freedom Party, DFP, you know, which was led by Obeda Samoa and Co. at the time. Bit Zidding was part of the DFP. Frances, the same persons who had lost the 2005, you know, national executive election of the NDC. Now, in the 2008 runoff, they supported the NPP. But what happened is that the National Reform Party, prior to the 2008 elections, at the end, one of the NDC's conferences was there, and at the time, one of the songs that were always played was "Come Back, Come Back, Come Back to Me." They did go back, and you realize that, you know, when the likes of Emilia Arthur didn't contest the Shama seat in 2008, the NDC won the Shama seat because in previous elections, 2000, 2004, she contested, had a lot of votes, which affected the NDC's chances. Bit Zeding and Obeda Samoa, you know, eventually went back to the NDC during the reign of Professor John Evans Atamo. So if you look at the historical antecedents, you can say that's not something that you say wouldn't happen or can't happen. Okay. It could happen. But the question you ask is...
Which of the possibilities?
So there's a possibility of, you know, mending bridges. And so you can have Nana Akufo-Addo Agyeman Rawlings, you know, going back. As to what it will take, I do not know. I don't know what grudge she holds against the NDC. Rawlings, while he was alive, had you know, in instances to criticize the fact that there was lack of integrity. In fact, in that particular meeting with the GJ, he talked about how he was going to publish his book and how he waited for his wife to write her book first. It Takes a Woman. Sadly, we didn't see that book. He talked about the triumph over evil. That was going to be the title of his book.
That's what he said was going to be the title of his book.
Yes,
Triumph over Evil.
The Triumph over Evil. And at that meeting, he said that, well, he wanted the wife to finish writing her book so that the things that the wife missed would be found in his book.
Wow.
Sadly, he didn't release that book. He said he had basically written the book. He was just waiting that he was going to have it published. So I do not know, and something that did not come up at the time.
And whether or not the family will go ahead and publish the book wherever he reached with it.
Exactly, but in that particular discussion, he said a lot of things, some of which are off the record, so I cannot say on air. But when you listen to all the things Mr. Rawlings said, you certainly would have, an idea why it looked like he was always critical of his own party. Yeah, and because these are off-record conversations,
of course.
I can't say it on air.
Of course, some people have said that at a point he felt he had lost hold of the party that he formed, and that hurt him a bit. But Winston, and let's just bring to our viewers, the highlight of the message or the statement that Zanetta Rawlings just issued a while ago. Just take a quick look at what she says, and I want to convey to you the request that she makes, or the family makes of all of us. They are saying that a family is sad, and it is with this sadness that they announce the death of their father. The date he dies, they put it there, Thursday morning after a short illness. And of course, they're not giving us, from their perspective, details of why or what it was that took him. But the family is requesting privacy at this difficult moment. And they're saying that details of funeral arrangement will be announced in due course. Signed, Dr. Zaneto Ajiman Rawlings. Let's take also a quick look at a brief profile of Mr. Rawlings. We brought you, of course, a report that catalogs his life thus far, but take a look at this one. Just in case you missed a story that catalogs his life, this gives you an idea of the person that we're mourning. This is our continuing coverage of the death of former President Jerry John Rawlings here on the Joy News channel. I am Gifty Andopi. I'm here with Winston Amwa. We're talking about the man, what he stood for, what lessons there are, the implications of his death within the timing of an election that's beckoning. We've been talking about all of that. But Mr. Rawlings himself has been speaking about the 2020 elections. He said during the June 4th celebration at his Ridge residence a number of things about the upcoming elections. Listen.
The Electoral Commission, which is the fulcrum of our multi-party democracy, must be supported and protected by all stakeholders to ensure a free and fair election and a peaceful society. That notwithstanding, it is equally important for that revered institution to ensure that the processes leading to this year's elections are done in consultation with the stakeholders of the nation to prevent unnecessary suspicion and promote a peaceful and cohesive society. An election is an event, but building a democratic, free and peaceful society is a process. So the debate surrounding the new voters register must be thoroughly examined so we do not undermine the successes we have chalked so far as a nation. In addition, the constitutional mandate of the Electoral Commission must be respected by all. While we work towards perfecting our electoral process, I urge you all to pursue and sustain our uniqueness as a country in the democratization process. The sanctity of the right of choice is not a matter we can compromise on.
The sanctity of the right of choice is not something we can compromise on. Winston, this is, I think, about the last we'll hear of Mr. Rawlings on any election. And that was the look there that a lot of people talked about. Actually, it sort of overshadowed the message he actually put out there. Let's talk about the message. Maybe we can talk about the looks later. In this, at this particular program, a lot of people were saying, oh, he's supporting the Electoral Commission. And then all of a sudden, people's attention had to be drawn to the fact that he also talked about how the Electoral Commission must ensure that the process is free, fair, and transparent.
Exactly, and so that's why, you know, I keep saying that one of the things that no matter how well you hated Mr. Rawlings, you couldn't take away from him was the fact that he said things as they were. Okay, and so if there's something going on wrong, he will talk about it. And he talked about the Electoral Commission, the sanctity of the right of choice is something that we can't compromise on. So the fact that, look, we're going to be making a choice and people should be given the opportunity to make a choice. And in making that choice, they should make the choice in such a way that they don't, you know, compromise the process. And look, elections all over the world, and I've heard, you know, past chairman of the Electoral Commission say, in some instances, elections would be free and may not be fair. In other instances, election may be fair or may not be free. Or in some instances, the elections may be free and fair. So you always would hear observers, you know, they would write all that diplomatic language here and there. But the point is, for all of us as a country, we need to correct the Electoral Commission when they have to be corrected. There's always been that challenge with the Electoral Commission, and not just this Electoral Commission. All electoral commissions feeling that they are above reproach. And everything you say to them is like, no, I can't take it anymore. And one of the things Mr. Rawlings sought to do in there was to let them know that, look, people would speak because they have concerns. And the concerns they have is because they want to see the right things being done. We all can't afford to go back. And that's why he says we can't afford to erase the successes that we've chalked over the years. And what are those successes? We've become, you know, the beacon of Africa's democracy. Everybody talks about the Ghanaian situation. And that's why I would say we cannot afford to lose it. And if we can't afford to lose it, what would be the surest way of losing it? By voter fraud. And so the Electoral Commission must ensure we don't go through a process of voter fraud. And that can only happen if they are reminded of the fact that these are the successes we have chalked in the past. And people making a choice, the sanctity of people making a choice can certainly not be compromised.
The one thing that we put at the end of the report we did was that one of the greatest assets that Mr. Rawlings left for Ghanaians is democracy, because he's been credited for the peaceful transition from one government to the other, and for that constitution of the 1992 constitution. To what extent do you think that people agree when you credit that to him as part of his legacy?
Well, so it's important to say that when Mr. Rawlings took over in June 4, 1979, elections were planned for June 18. So General Akufu was actually planning to have elections in June that year before Rawlings tried his coup on the 15th of May, which was unsuccessful, and eventually a group of soldiers, having a successful coup in 1979, which led to his release, and then he became chairman of the AFRC. Also, we were in a democracy when Mr. Rawlings overthrew, Dr. Hilal Liman. So if you look at that, you probably may say that, well, this is a man who overthrew a constitutionally elected government under a democratic dispensation, in effect overthrew the Third Republican Constitution.
Would you not pardon him for the context?
I'm actually coming to that.
Right.
So you could pardon him for the context of 1979, because he came in to want to end all military regimes. Also, and that's why they executed the generals. Handed over. So the coming back in 1981 sought to have undone the things he did in 1979. But you see, by 1982, the NCD had been formed, and there were deliberations on the need to have the country return to democracy. By 1992, we had returned to democracy. Now, there were things in our constitution which were put in there because Mr. Rawlings wanted it to be so. And if you speak to the Committee of Eminent Persons who drafted the 1992 constitution, they would tell you, for instance, that the country wanted to have a prime minister, just like the British system, and have a head of state. Mr. Rawlings said no. And we know of other things that got into the constitution, and even the fear of people to use the title chairman, because chairman was synonymous with Rawlings, Chairman Rawlings.
And I know that he loved it when he was addressed as
Chairman Rawlings, then it becomes your friend immediately.
I know.
One time when I really wanted to have an interview with him, we said,
I was just going to say that.
And he turns
I think one of the best ways to get him to respond to you in a crowd with your microphone is to say chairman. Exactly.
Yes. So, but you see, when he accepted to have us return to democracy in 1992, people thought it was a fluke. Oh, there's pressure on him. But in 2000, after the elections, Mr. Rawlings handed over power. Now, by that gesture, he actually was able to right the wrongs of the past. And since then, we've had the longest democratic era in our country's history. And for the man who oversaw that, it would be unfair not to credit him for having led us back to democracy. You can say, what if he hadn't done what he did? We still would have been in a democracy. But one thing you should also remember him for is the fact that eventually he returned us to democracy.
Eventually he returned us to democracy. And that's one of the things that I believe people love him for. So we all have our flaws, we all have our excesses, and he did too. But I think that that's the one thing that a lot of people remember him and love him for. And like I said, the one part of the country that we know, for lack of a better expression, is I think the Volta region, which also became the stronghold of the party that he formed. And we're hoping to cross over to the region to find out how they are responding or reacting to this. But before we do that, here is Mr. Joshua Alabi, Professor Joshua Alabi, who worked under the regime of Mr. Rawlings, and also is heading the party's bid to come back to power next year. Listen.
The appointment was going to make. That is a full minister. He was going to appoint me a full minister. I also sent a word back to him to make me deputy minister because I was young and I needed to learn from somebody. Rawlings said no, I should tune my mind to it and that I'm capable of doing it. And true to his word, he didn't change it and made me a full minister. So I can say Rawlings unearthed me and developed me. And that is why today I'm still in active politics. He was a charismatic leader who knew when to lead from the top and when to lead from the bottom. He was able to build the fourth republic of this country. Prior to that, most of our constitutions never lasted 10 years. But J. Rawlings involved everybody when it came to the Constitutional Assembly in drafting the Constitution. That is why this Constitution has lasted for many years. We have to give him that credit. It's a big loss to the world, big loss to Africa, big loss to Ghana, and a very, very big loss to the National Democratic Congress. We pray for his soul, and may the good Lord grant him peace wherever he is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna.
A longer one, we'll bring that to you. Winston, we talked about Professor Alabi shortly. I can imagine how he's feeling now. And I've worked with Professor Alabi for 2 years when I worked at the Investor Professional Studies, formerly IPS. And I think that he did very well with the school, even though. And when it came to managing, the student politics on campus, vis-a-vis how you do your work to make it easier for you to do your work, you can tell that he learned a lot from former President Rawlings.
Exactly, and so if I remember that in an interview with him during the crisis on KNUST campus, one of the things he said was that, if I were the Vice Chancellor, I'd have joined the boys to protest. And, during the military days, Mr. Rawlings would go to, there's a story of going to University of Ghana campus. I think he was going for graduation. The Commonwealth boys went around with him, raising morale and all of that. Rawlings always had a nice way of getting people to get excited. His jokes were always on point. He had a good sense of humor.
He does.
So, yes, it is true. Professor Alabi really excelled at the University of Professional Studies, then IPS. And as he said, he should have learned a lot of things from Rawlings because if you look at the reign of Mr. Rawlings and how he was able to get all his appointees to conform to the things he believed in. You're talking about the Volta region, for instance, and I was raised in the Volta region, and so have an understanding of how he meant to the people of the Volta region. I remember in 2004, I think that was October 28 or so, it was a Friday, and I was going to Mali School for a national congress. And then I saw Mr. Rawlings in an Evan. So he had come to Ho to come and campaign for Professor Mills. Now, when he got to Ho, Gifty, and it would surprise you, he actually pulled his neck out of the Evan and was responding to cheers from people. And I kept that date in mind because I was shocked. This is a former president. He comes to Ho and he does that.
Yeah.
I remember his last campaign rally in Ho when he was speaking, and before he left, he would shed tears and say, people sometimes, blame him that he's not been able to do well for the Volta region. He would have loved to do so well for the Volta region. But the point is that even though he comes from the Volta region, he's president for the whole of Ghana and not just the Volta region. And so the tears he was shedding was because he couldn't do so much. Not because he didn't want to, but he was there representing the whole population.
Everybody else.
And that would tell you the kind of a person he was. And those days when it was time for elections in Ho, and if you saw the old women going to vote, all that it said was, Yevuviade, Yevuviade,
Yes.
Yevuviade. In effect, whereas the white man's son, where's the white man's son? Or, you know, so they would go in there and vote for him. He was such a huge character, and one who was very much loved in there. And he always knew how to play to, you know, that he always had a way of endearing himself to you, no matter what you had against him. I mean, if you didn't like him, he would show up at a point in time. And in those days, if Rawlings was coming to Ho, for instance, all the churches would provide ushers for the event. I'm telling you. And so this would actually tell you how he meant to the people, Gifty. He meant so much to them that churches would actually prepare and select, you know, the best in the church, the best ushers in the church, to go and serve as ushers, you know, for the Rawlings event. Even though it was a campaign rally, you know, irrespective of the party you belonged to, you'll be pleased at the time to have been selected to go and serve as an usher for a Rawlings event.
Yeah, and it's interesting the point that Professor Alabi makes, that he knows how to lead from the top and he knows how to lead from the bottom. Well, I'm hoping that there are lessons that politicians of today, young politicians, whatever it is, will be able to learn from Mr. Rawlings. But like I said, we'll be crossing over to the Volta region and find out how the people are reacting to this news. But let's do a bit more of your messages. Also, I'd like to alert you to the fact that Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has also sent a statement. In that statement, he's suspending his campaigns. We'll read for you what's contained in that particular message. But some of you have shared some messages with her. This one says, Gifty, Ghana has lost a great icon at the moment when the country is preparing for an election. May his maker receive him into his bosom until we meet again. Papa J by Kelly Vincent in Navrongo. Kelly, thank you for sending this one in. This one says, we've actually lost a giant for this country. I commiserate with his family and loved ones, and especially his wife and children. Well, the one thing they're asking for in this time is privacy. The family says they want privacy so they can mourn their loss. Ghana has indeed lost a great statement, an epitome of democracy. The whole nation is going to miss you. From Ibrahim. Ibrahim, thank you for sending that message. Let me quickly bring you Mr. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's statement and what he says. So it says here, the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has cut short his 12-day campaign. So he was on a 12-day campaign tour of the 3 regions in the northern part of Ghana after the demise of former President Rawlings. On hearing the news, Dr. Bawumia, who is also the running mate of the governing NPP, suspended immediately his campaign, describing former President Rawlings his passing as a great loss to Ghana, Africa, and the world. He says, President Rawlings is a man I have known and respected for a long time. His role in the political history of Ghana is indelible. His contribution to national discourse and development over the years has helped shape Ghana. His passing is a great loss to the nation. And Dr. Bawumia is also expressing condolences to the former First Lady, Her Excellency Nana Konadu Rawlings, the children and the allied families, and the nation as a whole. And of course, a lot of things have been called off as we mourn the former president. 7 days of national mourning, as expressed by the former by the president. Winston, the statement from Mr. Bawumia. Do you think, was it necessary on the back of the president's announcement? I mean, is this mere formality? You just have to do it because...
Yes, the president had talked about how they were suspending their campaign. So normally you would expect that the vice president doesn't come in. But I'm sure that, in also expressing his own condolences to the family around this time, it becomes important for the vice president to also let us know that he's ending his campaign. Yes, the president has talked about it, but once you're talking about, expressing your condolences to the family, what are you doing after expressing your condolences? The president has talked about, 7 days of mourning, and in the period of 7 days of mourning, the common sense thing to do is that all campaigns should cease. Yeah. And so all political parties should cease their campaigns. And I am sure all of them will do that. They're not going to be talking about the things they will do or what someone has done wrong, because now campaigning wouldn't be going on. And I'm sure within that period, the family can come together, fix a date. The Evers don't have a 1-week tradition. And so what that means is that the family can meet tomorrow or Saturday and decide when to have the funeral of the late Jerry John Rawlings. And that's why maybe the vice president had to also put in there that he's suspending his campaign.
Yeah, well, he's not the only one. The minority, we spoke to the minority leader who says that they will be coming out with a statement as well on what they will be doing, but they've also suspended their campaign. So it looks like even the presidential, the parliamentary candidates themselves are also hanging on for a while. Well, let's listen to a bit more of Mr. Rawlings, the man we're all mourning today.
Bible into my country, your continent, the Muslim who brought whatever it is. He is the same person who has gone and invented the lie detector test, the chemical interrogation test. I would dare you to go and line up some of your finest policemen, some of your finest editors, some of your finest, what you call it, judges. Make any allegations against me, you included. Whatever questions you want to ask, take me through a chemical interrogation. I will be the one who will pass. I wonder how many of you will pass. You know something, Chief? If we can learn to be bold enough.
Mr. Rawlings there, I can't remember exactly, but he was responding to, there was a conversation around something, and he was responding to that. I think he had been invited to a place, and then he, as part of that, I don't know if you remember, Winston, what he was referring to back then.
Well, I know Mr. Rawlings has been talking about chemical interrogation and lie detector tests for a very long time. Okay. And anytime, you know, he said something that has been challenged, one of the things he said is that, yes, he's willing to prove that he's right, and that they should, you know, make available a lie detector test and chemical interrogation. I mean, he said this over and over and over again. When he said he knew the killers of the women at the time, you know, the women who died prior to election 2000, and he was actually said they should bring a chemical detector, you know, interrogation and lie detector test, and he would subject himself to it, and he would mention the names to prove to people that he wasn't telling lies. Unless that was done, he wasn't going to say anything. So that's been a position that Mr. Rawlings has held. And you know, I stated earlier that one of the things about him is that he always would stick to his positions or his beliefs. So if he believes that before he answers you, he needs chemical interrogation and a lie detector test, he consistently would continue with that narrative.
Interesting. So Eliasu is sending us this message from Tamale. He says, such a sad day for Ghana. While I had my own reservations about him, he came out to be a very consistent person. In line with what you just said, Winston, about consistency. He says Mr. Rawlings has come out to be a very consistent person. He stood for his principles. Condolences to the family. Ghana has indeed lost an illustrious, he says, an illustrious son. This one, okay. And when the messages come in like this, it sort of throws me away, so I have to take my time and read through them. But earlier we were playing a sound for you from his final interaction with the Ghana Journalists Association, in which he talks about integrity and accountability, etc. We had to truncate it at a point and bring you Maxwell Agbagba's interaction in Kumasi. Take a look at the final part of that conversation in which he talks about integrity, the things that he stood for.
Looking down into your house, you convert it to a library or clinic. You maintain it as a hotel. So what kind of double standard is this? See the power of that English language? That's what he speaks. That is the law is written in that language. How many of us would toy with the truth if we had to be dealing with our languages? When I was in office and the opposition was harassing us, not necessarily MPP, opposition in general, wouldn't give us a break. And it was an issue related to something that didn't make sense to me. So I invited Daniel Ajekum, who was then the regional minister. And as we sat down the way we are sitting, I know him to be a Christian like me in a tomorrow school. He was my senior, my prefect. I asked Ajekum, "You're a Christian, aren't you?" He said, "Yes." That issue related to this thing for which you're being insulted and the whole government is being brought down. Are you prepared to swear on that you are Ashanti River? Antoine. Are you prepared to swear on the Antoine? He said yes. I said, please, when you get back, swear on that Antoine that this is the truth related to that, whatever it is.
So that is the final part of that conversation that he had with the GJA earlier. And Winston, this was a meeting once again that you attended.
I did, Gifty, but you know, like I stated, a lot of the things that Mr. Rollins said, and just to corroborate what Elton said earlier, that a lot of the things you see interviews you have with Mr. Rollins or wherever he finds, a lot of the things are off record.
Yeah.
You know, so off record, he tells you, turn off your cameras. Let's have this conversation. It's off-record conversation. Majority of it was off-record conversation. Right. He talked about a lot of things off-record, which we can't say.
That's okay. That's okay. So some more messages coming in. This one says, it is sad that we have lost a great leader, President Rawlings. Let us see whether those who spoke evil about him will now say something good about him. We love you, JJ. Eddie sends this message from Teshi. This one says, my boss, Dr. Senano Kwesi Jokoto, is a special aide to the late President J.J. Rawlings, and we often visit him on a weekly basis. He is affable, caring, he goes on and on. May the Almighty God console his family and Ghana at large. Jerry sends that from Keta. Mr. Mahama is speaking. Let's listen to him now.
Down. He's leaving. He's leaving the Golden Beam Hotel, heading to the Kumasi Airport, where he's going to board a flight back to Accra. He's leaving at this point. So that's it. The NDC presidential candidate John Mahama is in this vehicle, heading to the Kumasi Airport right now. And as you well know, the campaign here has been suspended. Everyone is jumping on board. Everyone is leaving, and we are all leaving at this point. The campaign here, the 6-day campaign tour, has ended in the Ashanti region. And that's what is happening here in Kumasi. Earlier, he had information on the ground when he was campaigning, and he made an announcement in the Obuasi East constituency where he was scheduled to speak to the crowd. He couldn't do that. He had to suspend his campaign. So that is the situation here on the ground, Gifty, and we'll keep you updated on what is happening.
And that's exactly what Maxwell is doing. Maxwell, thank you, and for bringing us up to speed on what's happening. So that was from the president, the presidential candidate for the NDC. You just saw the former president, John Mahama, who is leaving Kumasi right now because they've suspended the campaigns there. So he's heading back. I was just sharing with you some of the messages that are coming through us, and when we have any more developments from that side, we'll bring it to you. We also know that President Akufo-Addo will be visiting the rich home of Mr. Rawlings. We'll bring you that one as well. But this was from Jerry. Jerry sent this message from Keta. This one says, we have nothing to say besides this sadness to us on this globe, unless we all keep on praying for the incomparable soul. May our lovely legendary J.J. Rawlings' last destination be heaven. May God Almighty give us such great people in our country. R.I.P. You don't add your name to it, but thank you for sending your message. This one says, wow, very sad indeed. Rest in peace, His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings. Condolences to the family. This one says, this is Nasir Sani from Upper West. Says, may the gentle soul of our former president rest in peace. Our father and hero, you will never be forgotten by Ghanaians, especially we, the NDC party. Rest in peace, father. Condolences to the family of J.J. Rawlings. He was a great legend indeed. May his soul rest in perfect peace. So a lot of your messages are coming as we all commiserate. Remember, it's 7 days of mourning. We're all mourning the former president. Wednesday, let's wrap up briefly with what are you going home with? I'm wondering. I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, this is the president I knew growing up. And for me, in my head, it was the way that I perceived God to be, because I felt like this is a person you will never come into contact with. But I grew up coming very close. I mean, this will stay with me for a while. I'm wondering what you're taking away.
Well, so Gifty, in July 1993, you know, when he was in Ho to commission the Ho Water Project, I was there. In all his rallies that he held in Ho, I mean, as young boys, you go there, you go and see him. All of us loved him as a president of the country. And it was a pleasure when I had a chance to interview him. Well, sad as life may be, I believe in the principle that death is an end to all suffering.
Winston, thank you very much. It's been a long stay for you here on air. Winston Amwa there, he was here earlier with Koji Youngson. My name is Gifty Andwapia. Many thanks for staying with us, and let's all mourn and give the family the privacy they're requesting. Many thanks for your time.